All right. Welcome, guys, to another edition of RecTech Live here on a Thursday afternoon in the Northeast. And looking forward to a great discussion today with the guys from OLEEO. We'll be talking about crazy good interviewing, how to instantly improve your interview experience, which is, I think, a hot topic these days from a candidate experience standpoint. So we've got Jason Daniels and Ian Nadarajah on the call with us, and we'll get to them in a second. Just a few shout outs to who's on the call. We've got about 60 registered almost, and Melissa, Adam, Paul, Britt, let's see here, Geary, Marianne, Joji, Christy Bruner, Tina Ramirez, Nathan Smith, Tracy Rivera, Jess, Shelby, Dawn Russell, no relation, Abigail Griffiths, Goja, Jason, and Lada. So welcome, everybody. Glad you're all here, and time for another RecTech Live. Just a reminder, next week I'll be talking to Max Armbruster from TalkPush, which is a kind of a CRM / chatbot about conversational recruiting and how all that works. So that'll be an interesting discussion. I think TalkPush is kind of a global chatbot company, and they've been around for a few years now, definitely have some good traction, particularly overseas where they started. So it'll be interesting to hear how Max tackles, conversational recruiting and kind of what that means for recruiters out there. So next week, January 17th, 1 p.m. Eastern, and rectechlive.com to register. Also follow us on Crowdcast, and off we go. All right, so today with me are Jason Daniels. Say hello, Jason.
Hello. Good afternoon, everyone.
Ian from OLEEO.
Hi, guys.
All right. They're coming to us from Scarsdale, New York, in the OLEEO offices, the artist formerly known as WCN. All right. So, Jason, what are we going to talk about? What are we going to talk about today? Tell us more about just a quick intro on you guys, and get into the slides here.
Sounds great. We're going to talk about crazy good interviewing. We're excited to kind of share with you kind of the things that we've come across and from our customer base, and really help everyone to improve kind of processes as they look at it. I thought we'd start off by talking about OLEEO a bit, maybe a few minutes of talking about who we are, what we're about. OLEEO's been around for about 20 plus years. OLEEO in itself means a diverse collection of things that come together that make something beautiful. So we hope we talk about something beautiful for you today, talk about how our customers, Morgan Stanley, Express Scripts, others are really helping to improve their interview process using our products. And hopefully it's pretty informative for you.
Good.
Our agenda is pretty simple, right? We're going to focus on three main things: common interview management pain points, right? What are you dealing with? The problems that you're trying to tackle, kind of the best practice of how to counteract those things, how to make your life much easier. And then last, we're going to have a beautiful demo by Ian talking about our product, how those things come to life, how we solve the things that we're all dealing with when it comes to bad interviews. What I thought I'd start off with, though, is talking about interview in general. If you think about it, it's safe to say that almost everyone in their life has had some form of fashion, a bad experience, right? Or less than ideal experience when it comes to interviewing. As a matter of fact, if you go online, there's tons of stories, negative and even somewhat comical, about interview experiences people have had. So really, it makes a lot of sense when you think about it, because the interview experience is the most common in most terms. It's never been really great. So if you think of it as a candidate standpoint, it feels like, you're oftentimes as a candidate, this picture is really reflective of that. Have they done research on me? Have they read my background? Are they asking me generic or subjective questions? Does HR even know what you're trying to fill from a job standpoint? And, I've been in this interview 4 or 5 times with different stakeholders, but they're asking the same questions over and over, right? Are they being transparent with me around salary and my growth potential? And really the same thing for employers, right? There's a real concern about candidates not telling the truth or them representing their past incorrectly. Oftentimes, there's a big thing going around scheduling interviews, how complicated it is. And also the fact that when you talk about complication of interviewing, that people are now ghosting employers, not showing up for interviews, and staging the process of trying to find ways to fill jobs quickly for business critical roles. What's interesting about that is that, people who are doing recruiting or interviews are processing lots of records, right? They're trying to find 50, hundreds, 300 people down the process all at one time. So it's super complicated. So it's not easy to navigate the world of interviewing, but interviews is a bedrock of how we hire. You can argue whether it should be, but it's not going away anytime soon. So if you're an employer and you have these mix of concerns or issues, you really have to understand, how do I improve this experience to make the effort and the process much better? So today we're going to be addressing and discussing a few ways to really create an environment of crazy good interviewing.
Hey, Jason, I got a quick question for you first.
Yes, Chris, what's going on?
What are your clients telling you about ghosting?
Yeah, more and more you hear people, I think the process around people are saying, hey, we have a great experience. We've had great discussions. And for some reason, right, people are using, maybe it's because of texting or taking the experience and not really looking at it as serious as it should be. So there's people dropping off for one way or the other, whether it's experience is not what they thought it was, or the criteria is not clear. The point is, a lot of customers are telling us that it's becoming more and more complicated. What's interesting about this is that you think about how critical interviews are, right? The process of interviews are continuing to evolve and change, and it's making an impact on the quality of hire. As you mentioned, kind of the question is, companies have identified it's breaking the process. Processes are not quite ideal. How do you continue making that a better experience for everyone? So really, at the end of the day, what are the pain points that we hear more and more commonly and often? It seems like every week we hear something new, but here's the main four we want to talk about. Before we do that, we thought we'd address a poll with the audience.
Yep, just look at the question bottom of the screen, audience, for the poll, and please add your answer in there if you could.
Perfect. So what is your biggest challenge regarding interview management? Is it A, coordinating with candidates, B, coordinating your interviewers, C, collecting useful feedback, or finally D, sharing candidate and logistic information with the hiring team? I've got a hunch on what it's going to be, but we'll see how it comes out.
Okay. Lotta, Rebecca, Paul, you can put your answers in the poll at the bottom of the screen. Just click on the poll, and you should see it there. You can vote. Looks like we have a clear winner so far.
Nice. Perfect. So C, it looks like, is the winner here.
Yep.
Awesome. So collecting useful feedback, and that's kind of where we're going to be talking about in a bit as well. So yeah, we agree. Feedback is critical. In addition to that, you have interviewing and scheduling as well. So, we need to think about interviewing scheduling kind of this way, right? In the 1930s, Keynes was an economist, and he said that by now we would have 6-hour working days. We'd be working a lot less because of the advancement of technology. But what's interesting is that we have self-driving cars. We have phones in our pockets or our purses that powered the initial space shuttle, yet we still spend more and more time, 33, 50, 60 emails scheduling interviews successfully, right? So that's a big problem, right? We're mainly doing things that should be automated. You think about sharing candidate data. Organizations are neglecting to give managers the tools and access to visibly understand what's going on in the interview, who they're meeting, the logistics around that, and also helping preparing them so they're successful in making sure they're capturing the right type of information for them as well. Then third, internal and candidate feedback is really critical. Getting and capturing feedback from candidates is so important because it allows you to understand, who's the right fit, who isn't. It makes the process more efficient and easier. It makes the time to hire less. And traditionally, right, the problem here is that teams are using manual tools that are making this process even harder. And then last, candidate communication. We all want to be communicated with. We all want feedback. We all want to know where we are in the process. And oftentimes candidates just aren't getting information from the employers to how did I do? How can I improve? What's next steps, right? These are all things not taking place. It's obviously increasing a huge burden on everyone involved, reducing the risk of people dropping out, and also just by simply giving them reminders on what's next or giving them a kind of itinerary of what to expect during your process are pretty important.
Yeah, those reminders, I think, are pretty key, for me. I think the more you can constantly, reinforce what's going to happen in the process and what to expect, the better.
Sure, I couldn't agree more. About high volume hiring days, which is a really unique kind of environment, that all the things we're talking about are more compounded in such a short amount of time. So if you think about high volume hiring day, for example, it's 4 hours, you may be seeing thousands of people. So all those burdens around scheduling, around feedback, around insight into what's going on, our communication is even more exposed because you're doing it in such a short period of time. So how do we continue trying to improve that? We're going to talk about that today. We're really excited to do that. So really further about feedback, I thought this stat was great because it allowed us to understand that 60% of applicants never hear back from the employer after an interview. It's a huge percentage, right? Obviously, we've all had a job at some point in our life. How do we continue to make sure that we have a positive interview experience? Are we hearing back at least a yes or a no so we can understand and close the loop on that process? So that's really up to the employers to do that, but also the candidates to ask for that experience as well.
That's a ton, 60%.
I know. It was quite shocking when we came across the data ourselves.
Yeah, no wonder they're ghosting you guys. I mean, employers.
There's also a huge reliance on traditional methods, right? Are we changing the way we're asking questions? Are we asking individual questions to get down to the heart of what we need in a role? So are we asking individuals things as high level as, why do you think you're right for the role? That's a great question, or at least to be a great question. Traditionally, we need to be asking questions to understand how they're measuring those things. Right? We're data-driven, organizations now who need data specific. So how do we ask questions in a different way? Like, for instance, how are you measuring your achievement in this area or that area? So it's about making sure we're assessing and using tools and using, comparisons throughout the process to assess where they may be and where their potential for growth in the organization as well. So a few best practices. The first one is again, highlighting kind of the theme we've had today. It's a marriage between two equally important individuals, right? Candidates and the recruiter. Now, they don't work well together in harmony, right? It's chaotic. We have to have a great candidate experience, that we understand what they need, give them pure insight to what's going on, help them understand where they're going to be from A to Z, but also making sure that we close the loop when things aren't quite a right fit. And same for the recruiters, right? They should have the opportunity and the ability to understand, what they're looking for from the candidate, set clear expectations to the candidate up front, share salary information sometimes as well, even if you may be reluctant, because it helps set up playing level field and it opens up to clear communication throughout the entire interview experience. And then a structured process. Having a process can be scary, but the reality is it helps you to find hires faster and have them to retain them longer, right? Consistent strategies, consistent questions across the board, make sure that you have a consistent process. Everyone's being asked the same thing, everyone's being measured the same criteria, and everyone has the same end result, which is hopefully finding a right fit for individuals or asking them to obviously understand what's going on next in the interview process as well.
Hey, Jason, one of the main complaints I hear from job seekers when it comes to interviewing is that they keep getting asked the same questions over and over again. So does OLEEO help with that? And B, what are your thoughts on that subject itself in terms of, making sure your interviewers ask different questions to all these candidates?
Yeah, great. So, we have in our system the ability to obviously manage, controlled feedback forms, right? So you understand what feedback was left by your peers as well as what feedback you're leaving, right? So if you understand kind of that workflow or that timeline history of what's going on, you have a better idea of what's been asked. So you don't ask the same thing, right? Which is common. Our goal is to hope to improve that. So you're going to find our technology helps to make sure that you're consistent across the board. But those questions that have already been asked, you have an idea already based on the feedback by your peers.
Gotcha.
Not a new technology, but an important one, video interviewing, right? Are we leveraging technology the way people are expecting us to? Are we going to candidates where they want to be? Maybe they want to interview at home. They don't want to go into an office. Or maybe they want to interview on a beach somewhere. We are dealing with a whole different class of individuals who are interviewing for jobs. Are we giving them the tools they need to make sure that experience is positive? And also for your business as an employer, are you using interview tools to help make things more efficient? Right? Are you making sure that you have an easier process, more consistent process across the board? You can share videos with your peers so that it becomes less of a burden on having to schedule people on certain times and days, or are they on vacation or not. You have a tool that you can easily plug into anywhere they are to capture interviews during this time, but also to have managers be able to read or view them on the go as well.
Yeah. Hey, let me stop you here, Jason. I got a couple of questions.
Sure, go ahead.
Amy Koch has a question as well. I'll get to hers first. So she asks, is it beneficial to ask similar questions in different ways relating to areas of concern? So what's your answer there?
Yeah, that's a great question. So essentially you want to be able to ask questions across the board because you want to be able to get down to our earlier point that the biggest employer concern is that, am I getting truthful answers? Am I able to measure and understand the past of my candidate I'm sitting in front of? Are they giving me information that's representative of their resume? So yes, asking questions multiple ways it helps draw them out and get the answer you're needing to assess if they're right for the role or not.
Gotcha. All right. Now, when it comes to video interviewing, I'm curious how many of your clients use video interviewing overall, and then who are they interviewing? Is it mostly just students? Is it higher level ups? Tell me more about that if you could.
Yeah, so essentially the interview product is we partner with a few great industry leaders in the market. And what they're using the product to focus in on a wide variety, right? So early talent individuals, maybe those into accounting or finance roles, but also IT roles as well.
Yep. So would you say the majority of your clients are using video interviewing today, though, as just a general tactic?
It's actually, yeah, sure. I think I can safely say that the market's probably about 70% of people in this industry and our customer base are using video interviewing somewhere in the process.
70%. Okay. Very cool.
So reinventing the interview is what we're talking about, right? Making sure that we're leveraging the right skills, we're assessing individuals correctly, we're looking at new ways to continue improving. We're never going to get it 100%, right? We're always looking to improve the process, but we can get to that marker closer by simply making sure that we're open to new change. So, for instance, looking at ways to look at interview scheduling tools, or look at ways to improve the manager experience around feedback, are all ways to help you to better adopt that really crazy good interviewing experience. So really at the end of the day, we're going to be aware of some really important things, right? We should know the role that we're, as an employer, who we're hiring for. It only helps the candidate, but also helps you kind of disseminate in your mind what questions are important, and also as well as what candidates will be able to meet or exceed your needs. And then research the candidate in advance. If they're going to be there, they've done their homework, hopefully to learn more about the employer. Spend time looking at the resume. Use the tools that OLEEO may provide around print packages to see what data has been asked, what their application says, what feedback has been given so far by your colleagues, and use that information to have a good baseline to pull from. And then go online and look at reviews, right? As a candidate, what was said about the company, what are people saying as employees there, to give you an understanding of where the company's culture looks like, which only helps you really qualify and remind yourself and reaffirm why you're sitting down for an interview in the first place. And then as overall for both candidate and for the hiring managers, be prepared to talk about salary. I know it's complicated, it's uncomfortable, but the reality, it only sets for the groundwork of having a successful, open and candid conversation with people. When you start talking about things that everyone's really going to ask is, how much am I going to make, and can I essentially afford a candidate at the end of the day?
Yeah. Hey, Jason, regarding salary, how do your clients approach that? Do a lot of them put it on their job? Because we're starting to hear more now about, more transparency around putting the salary out there. Things like Google Jobs now actually like that data, and they help you rank higher if you have that data out there. So what are your clients telling you about the salary and how they list that or how they promote it overall?
Yeah, depending on the type of role, of course, that dictates that. But you'll find that they're obviously giving a lot more brackets of range to help determine kind of a fit, because I think it also helps the candidate to self-identify if that's a good fit for them or not, and it saves time in the process for the employer that says, hey, here's my budget for a particular role. By telling them in advance, at least a range, allows them to kind of speed up that hiring process.
Gotcha.
So at this point, I wanted to hand it over to my colleague to talk about, to at least show the group on the call today, really what we do from technology standpoint to reinforce those pain points to address kind of the best practices around that as well.
All right, cool. Ian, it's off to you.
Perfect. Okay, so in terms of the demonstration today, we're actually going to cover a demonstration from 3 personas. First of all, looking at the experience from a candidate's point of view, then looking at the experience from an interviewer on the day of the interview, providing feedback against the candidates, and then looking at the recruiter experience and how OLEEO can help the recruiters with coordinating and managing those different sets of interviews. So just want to check, you can see an example of an email on screen at the moment. This email is an example of where the candidate can be invited through to interview. So as you can see, the email is fully branded, fully personalized to the candidate, and it provides candidates with an instruction, inviting them through to interview, but also providing them with instructions on how they can book that interview. So if we click the link as a candidate, we're then directed to a registration portal. Once we log in, we're then presented with the ability to actually book one of these interview slots. Now, these interfaces are completely branded to match our clients' corporate brands, but also are mobile responsive. And so it allows our candidates flexibility to leverage different types of devices when they're looking to book their interview time. Now, candidates can click the link to book the interview and then be presented with a number of available interview slots that you have made available as recruiters. Candidates can review those interview slots and decide which time best works for them as an individual. And once they find a time that works for them, select the time and simply book in to confirm. Once the candidate books into that time slot, they will receive an on-screen confirmation that their interview is booked, and also shows them key information around the interview itself. So what interview are they booked into, and what activities will they be undertaking as part of that interview? So that's really there to set the expectations of candidates automatically, and so that they have visibility and can prepare and put their best forward for the interview. In addition, the candidates will receive communications via email or via SMS to remind them that they have an interview, and periodically before the interview, remind them to bring the right materials and encourage them to not forget that they have an interview. The idea, again, behind that is to really try to reduce the dropout rate around those interviews. And we've seen it within our existing client base, a reduction in the number of candidates who are no-shows at those interviews by up to 50% as a result of leveraging this reminder type technology. So as you can see, Chris, it's a really simple and easy interface for the candidates to have the visibility of those different interviews and book into those interview slots. What we're now going to do is fast forward and look at the interview from the perspective of the interviewer on the day of the interview itself.
Okay.
Viewers have access to what we call our mobile app. And the mobile app provides them with a summary of where the key candidates they're going to interact with and where those candidates are in the registration process. So we can see a number of candidates at the scheduled status and a number at the attended status in this particular example. For those candidates that are scheduled, as they arrive on the day, they can be checked in using the tool to move them into the attended status. And once they are checked in, we can then access those different attendees. And the important part at this point is the solution provides us visibility of some key information about the candidate, interview details, etc., but also provides us the opportunity to provide feedback against these candidates. And the way we provide feedback is flexible to support different users and how they want to provide that feedback. So you could be as simple as providing a thumbs up or thumbs down, indicating a quick pursuit level against the candidate. Alternatively, we can actually build up comments, which sort of build up a little bit of a conversation against the candidate where different stakeholders can share maybe their feedback, maybe any questions that they want to ask the candidate, any concerns that they have in a conversational way with other internal stakeholders.
Hey, Ian, got a question.
Absolutely, Chris.
So Marcin asks, You mentioned digital reminders decrease dropout rates even by 50%. Is that true for both white-collar and blue-collar candidates? Yes.
Absolutely. We've seen across our client base that using these reminders and using different types of reminders at the appropriate intervals works for both blue collar and any type of recruitment that you're doing.
Is there a frequency there that is recommended?
So it really does depend on the audience and the interview type itself. What we typically see is if candidates are booking an interview, let's say a month before the interview takes place, then we would try to remind that candidate maybe 2 weeks before, then maybe a week before, and then maybe a couple of days before the interview. So that there's a constant reminder that the candidate sent to the candidate to let them know that the interview is taking place and they're scheduled.
Got it. Okay.
Lots of our clients also leverage structured feedback as a way of focusing the attentions of the evaluators on specific competencies or areas that they want to be evaluating these candidates against. We really encourage our clients to do this as a way of driving consistency across the different interviews that they're doing, particularly when interviewing candidates for the same role. And so when we can focus on the competencies, whilst you can ask the questions maybe in a slightly different way in terms of how you word those questions, the questions are focused on areas that you really want to evaluate those candidates against. And then it's very easy for you to capture that feedback against those candidates, store that feedback against their records, and submit it appropriately through the solution. So what we're now going to do, Chris, is just move on to look at the interface from the perspective of a recruiter, really managing these interviews and coordinating these different interview activities.
Okay.
Okay, so here we are accessing our OLEEO's dashboard technology, and we're focusing initially on the interview itself. So the interviews provide us with summary of key interviews that we're involved in as an interviewer, quick access to key areas of the interview process. So at a glance, we can easily access our different groups of candidates, visibility of all the interviews and access to all the candidates booked into those interviews, as well as providing us a view where we can see the feedback that we've already received against the different candidates that we've interviewed as well. I think the key thing here is we are able to
Outlook.
Absolutely, Chris. I'm going to cover that off in a moment's time as well in terms of the Outlook. So one of the things that I wanted to show you today is how you can manage the interviews in the system. An OLEEO solution really helps you with any type of interview. So whether it be a traditional one-to-one interview that you may be running with candidates, whether it's a phone interview that you want to schedule, or if you want to maybe manage those more complicated and structured assessment days or super days, the solution can support you with that. In particular, looking at these assessment centers, we have the ability to break the assessment down into a number of different activities and then link those activities together to form an itinerary. And that itinerary can be shared with both the candidates, but also with your interviewers as well. In order to help communicate with your interviewing teams, we can issue calendar invitations through the system. The system will also track the responses of those invitations. So if an interviewer accepts, but more importantly, if an interviewer declines, the coordinator of the interview will actually be notified that that interviewer has declined, so they need to go and reallocate that task to another member of the team. Those notifications can always be set up, as we mentioned earlier, in terms of reminding the candidates when the interviews are taking place. And you can set the period of time that those notifications are issued. And you can have multiple notifications depending on the type of interview that you are running. Now, the OLEEO solution also provides you with a number of additional supporting documents to support the different stakeholders involved in the interview process. Starting initially from the perspective of the recruiter, they can generate an holistic overview of all activities taking place on the day so that they can see which candidates are meeting which interviewers, when that's taking place, what activity they're involved in, etc. We can also generate individual summaries for each individual interviewer. Now, the beauty of this is you can hand this to the interviewers on the day of the interview, so they can actually have a piece of paper that tells them exactly who they're meeting, when they're meeting that individual, and what activity they're undertaking. Similar documents can also be generated and handed to candidates on the day of the interviews as well. And also, to support the interviewers and support their understanding of the candidates that they're going to meet, we can also generate these summary books. Now, these print books or summary packs allow you to include any information that you've captured against the candidate. This includes information from their resume or from their application form. But the beauty of this is in a nicely formatted document in the order that you're going to interview the candidates, allowing your interviewers to really have at a glance quick access to the key information against the candidates to help facilitate conversations with those individuals. And so those documents are all really designed to make the interviewers, the candidates, and the recruiter's life as easy as possible on the day of the interview.
Okay.
So that's kind of a whirlwind tour of our interview functionality, Chris. I don't know if there's any particular questions that you'd like to ask.
Is there any ability to do you have like sample questions in there, things like that you can offer up to the interviewers?
Absolutely,
as far as
absolutely. So we can actually structure the feedback forms to present sample questions to really guide the interviewers on exactly what to ask. In fact, when our clients are leveraging phone interviews within the evaluation process, that is typically where we see that type of approach being leveraged.
And that itinerary you showed me, I thought was interesting. Especially if you have, multiple interviews set up for one day. Does the candidate get an email with basically just a laundry list of the day with that?
Yep. So the candidates will get emails to confirm their interview with key information about the interview. But I think what's important around the OLEEO tool is we give the candidates access to a candidate communication center. So at any point, the candidate can come back where they can learn more about the interview, where they can check any communications that have been sent to them. So there's a centralized portal or a safety net for your candidates to really help them prepare and put their best foot forward.
Interesting. And how is this managed, Ian? Let's say pretending I'm a sample employer out here. Who are all my recruiters using the interview tool as far as managing all that goes? Or do you have a central person usually that kind of handles the distribution of these emails and setups, all this stuff?
So it's actually really interesting, Chris. Lots of our clients, before becoming our clients, have actually often hired individuals purely to manage the coordination around these interviews, primarily because it's such a difficult task and it's such onerous in terms of interacting with different stakeholders and getting people's availability. For using our tool, lots of our clients are able to save significant amounts of time, so much so that those individuals can now repurpose most of their time going back to the real parts of their job, trying to really recruit and interact with those candidates, and freeing up lots of time for the other recruiters, allowing really any recruiter in the organization to get involved in the interview process. So you don't need a dedicated resource to really manage these interviews or the schedules.
Gotcha. And it's you can integrate it with your corporate Outlook accounts, things like that.
Absolutely. So those calendar invitations will work with Outlooks, Google Mail, etc., and then the responses will automatically be tracked in the system.
So what tips do you have for using something like this? What would you say what do you tell clients to make it as efficient as possible?
I mean, personally, I always recommend that the clients make those interviews available as early as possible, giving the candidates as much flexibility into booking their time slots. Also, early communication with your business when they need to be available, so we can try and make sure the right interviewers are at the right place at the right time. The supporting documents are always very helpful in supporting the interviewers as well. And I think the most important thing is when the interview is taking place, get constructive feedback from the interviewers that we can then not only helping us make the right hiring decision, but also sharing some of that feedback with candidates through communications or through the communication center as a way of providing them a better candidate experience as well.
Gotcha. Okay. Do you have any texting built into this at all either?
Absolutely. So you can leverage the reminder technology both through SMS or through email, and different clients will leverage a combination of those approaches depending on how many reminders they want to send to the candidates or how based on the audience that they're looking to interact with as well.
Yeah. Are you guys hearing more from your prospects out there and clients about texting overall in recruiting? I'm curious.
Yeah, absolutely. So OLEEO also provides a events management solution and a traditional ATS as well. And the texting has become very popular, both from the events perspective in terms of helping you to capture those candidates and engaging with those candidates, and also through the recruitment process as a way of issuing those updates to candidates as well. So definitely become more and more popular. And it's something that we as OLEEO have been offering for a number of years. So we have expertise and recommendations on when the best time to use those different approaches would be.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I'll let Jason chime in here as we kind of wrap this up, guys. Jason, I'll to your mic here. Jason, any last words you want to say here? What's new with OLEEO? What's coming up? Anything?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so I wanted to cover, just kind of close with, just obviously talking about OLEEO overall. We talked about one element of kind of interview management, but I think understand that this is kind of an entire ecosystem, right? So we have a series of products that help you kind of help improve your processes where necessary. They work great together. They work great individually. So if you have a need for interview management, for example, like we talked about today, great, we have a product for that. If you have a need for ATS or CRM or intern management or event management, these are all products that are helping you to really help make you guys, everyone better at their jobs. We're always looking for improvement. And then all this is wrapped around intelligent automation. So things that Ian showed us today, we're helping you to automate the process so you can focus on what's most important is having conversations with people. Right? Take away the burden of technology and focus in on having conversations and making that a great experience for everyone.
Gotcha. Cool. And where's OLEEO going to be this year? What shows you guys going to?
There's a long list of shows. I think that our next show we're going to be at will be in February. We're going to be at Talent Tech. Yeah, so it's going to be, we have a great speaker, one of our great leaders here at OLEEO, Jet, will be speaking there, talking about unbiased in the hiring process. So looking forward to seeing many of you there as well.
Is that the one in Vegas?
The one in Vegas, yes, exactly.
I'll be there, so
awesome.
We'll have to, I'll stop by the booth and maybe do a quick podcast with you guys.
Perfect, yeah, sounds great. Looking forward to it.
All right, audience, so that's it for today. Just a reminder, my next show is next week. I just threw a link there in the chat box there if you want to sign up. Conversational recruiting. I'd like to thank Jason Daniels and Ian Nadarajah from OLEEO today. Guys, thanks very much. Great to have you as always, and always look forward to talking with my pals at OLEEO. So have yourself a great day, and we'll see you next week, everyone.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
All right.